We are so back. I've got to be honest, after months of bad updates and balancing changes, I just couldn't be positive about Helldivers 2 anymore. It felt like every patch just continued digging a deeper hole for the game, and when Arrowhead kicked off their 60-day plan by breaking fire damage even more, yeah, that was the last straw for me. I had to take a break. I'm not joking, until the day this patch rolled around, it has been exactly 30 days since I've touched Helldivers 2. But then came around to the whole social media promo they were doing with buff divers, and they started teasing changes, which started to make my head turn a little bit. I'll admit I still wasn't completely sold, but it did pique my interest. Then the patch notes finally dropped, and man, they looked incredibly promising. I mean, what is this, like over 50 buffs to weapons and stratagems alone, on top of enemy nerfs, and an emote wheel?
Holy fucking shit.
I was always going to give this game another shot, but after reading those patch notes, I was more excited than ever to throw on that cape again and spread democracy. And let me tell you, this update is a game changer. Oh, bro, did I just like two-shot that boy? Where did he go? Bro, okay, we might be back. I would say it's like they hit Control Z on the past 6 months, but they did more than that. This isn't just a throwback to OG Helldivers. This Helldivers is new. It's the version we were promised when we purchased the game with overpowered weapons. For the first time in months, I'm having fun again. More fun than ever, actually. And he's dead. Oh, the leg. It's like, remember when you first saw Avengers Endgame in theaters and everyone in the crowd was simultaneously having a nerdgasm? That's how I feel playing this. No longer do you feel like you're playing Kite Simulator and permanently running in circles just to survive. Now it feels like the enemies should be running from you. This is the fantasy that was promised. Overpowered weapons, overwhelming odds. The enemies are still ample, don't get me wrong, they didn't dial the game back to journalist mode, and they didn't turn Helldivers into Space Marines, but what they did do is strike a perfect balance between challenge and fun. We are true glass cannons now, able to dish out a ton of destruction before we inevitably get overrun. And honestly, this is where I got it wrong. I truly didn't believe Arrowhead was going to do anything to this caliber. After months of disappointment, can you blame me for having absolutely no faith left? I was convinced that the developers had lost sight of why people fell in love with the game in the first place. It felt like we were stuck in a never-ending loop of patches that only made things worse. And honestly, if they got this one wrong, I was ready to throw in the towel permanently. So yeah, I can admit it, I was wrong. I truly thought at this point there were deep-rooted issues in the development team and that it would take months to get this thing sorted out. So I'm just incredibly pumped that my expectations have been blown out of the water. I've often said that Arrowhead will take one step forward but 2 steps backward with their patches, but this time around, this is more akin to a huge leap forward. Arrowhead has listened and has dove straight into the buff everything mentality. This patch genuinely feels like a love letter to the community. And if you're an OG diver, you're gonna feel right at home. Both the Breaker and Railgun have been dug out of their graves and feel exactly like they did during the first week of the game.
We are back, baby. We are fucking back. We're back.
And you already know, this had to be the first loadout I ran when I hop on. I basically snatched my setup straight out of the week 1 meta, and it instantly brought me back to the glory days, where the railgun was dishing out absurd damage and could kill even the biggest of enemies. The weapon now does the damage you expect when you hear that satisfying charge and loud boom every time you shoot. He's dead. Later. And the Breaker, man, this thing is just the ultimate Helldivers weapon. I don't care what anyone says. I think this is the most iconic Helldivers 2 weapon, and the game just feels right when this thing is powerful. It is the ultimate middle finger on the bug front, and I just love it. And those are just 2 things that I picked up from my first match of playing with the buffed versions of these guns. Oh, and also that the shield pack is bugged and literally makes you invincible. Okay, I knew they buffed the Helldivers in this patch, but this was not on my bingo card, I'm not gonna lie. P.S. I love that when they patched this out the next day, they noted that it was because Helldivers accidentally got their hands on General Brash's shield pack. which is reserved for 10-star generals only. So the breaker and railgun feel like they did on release, but what's truly incredible with this update is that every gun feels like they're on the same level as the breaker and railgun. I don't want to cover everything here because there's already a million videos on YouTube that cover all the patch notes, but I'm telling you, everything Arrowhead did here is great. They even touched the awful weapons like the SMG Knight, which is now actually pretty good. It's quite the trip to be able to just scroll through all the weapons and all the stratagems and basically be able to choose any loadout you want and be successful. The game has never seen something like this. Oh, and they also buffed the 500 kg, and it is now the actual big boom that you feel like it should be. Seriously, if you haven't yet, go drop a couple 500s and tell me you don't feel euphoric every time it gets you 25 plus kills. The best way I can describe how the game feels right now is that it's basically like it was on launch, except almost every weapon is good now. So the vibes and the fun are both here, but on top of it, you can experiment with literally any loadout you want. Really, all we're missing from making this the peak Helldivers experience is the 400k concurrent players, but I suspect that the game will crack the 100k mark again this weekend. Fingers crossed. Speaking of players, this update is getting pretty much universal praise. Aside from a very few minority of people that think this game needs to be a Souls-like, every normal Helldiver seems to love the update. Hell, this patch doesn't even feature any new content and has seen a bigger influx of players than Escalation of Freedom did. It really does make me happy for Arrowhead because they needed a win like this. Pretty much any other update they did in the past was perceived purely negatively. So I'm sure they're having a great weekend seeing the players react to this one. Speaking from my own Discord's POV, everyone in there loves it, and we're seeing more active lobbies in the past 3 days than we have in the past month alone. The chat has really rejuvenated with Helldivers hype. It's really cool to see. In fact, you should come see it for yourself. We have just over 2,100 members and have created a really active, non-toxic community of Helldivers players that just want to talk about video games and play them together. So if you need some hell buddies to dive with, it's the perfect place to spread democracy. Discord.gg/it'seasymode. Make sure to tag me when you join and say hello. I'd love to meet you. Anyway, back to talking Helldivers. This update not only has me wanting to ignore my personal life and play for 12 hours a day, but it has completely shifted my trust and opinions on Arrowhead, thus making me extremely hopeful for the future of the game. I've said for many months now that this game is going to require a lot of work over a long period of time to get to the state that we as players want it to be in. I think everyone can agree with me that the perfect, ideal vision we have for this game isn't being met right now, but this update has gotten us closer than ever. It's a huge step forward. And yeah, the game still has problems, no doubt. The late game content is abysmal, the progression system offers nothing to late game players, the game is still incredibly buggy, and there are still performance issues. But all of that was compounded and made worse when the balancing was bad. For the past 2 months, we've had a game that had a piss poor game loop because the balancing was terrible on top of everything else. So there was just no reason to play unless you were truly committed to the game. But now, Arrowhead has completed that first step. They've secured the fun again, and I'm very happy with the core gameplay loop we have right now. It just leaves me confident that by the time 2025 comes around, we'll be looking at a completely different Helldivers 2, because Arrowhead can finally start tackling the bigger issues with this game. No longer do they need to be hyper-focused on balancing. They can finally start looking to improve performance, fix bugs, and start nailing that live service vision they've always had of giving us new content every couple of weeks. On top of that, even though this is only one update, I think it's reasonable to claim that their philosophy has completely shifted, which gives me even more confidence in the future. In the past, they were concerned with making the game more realistic and making it challenging on players by nerfing the fun, but this update seems to have thrown all of that out the window. It seems like they've finally realized why people love this game, and spoiler alert, it's not because it's realistic. It's because it's chaotic and it's goofy. They are fully embracing that chaotic goofiness with this update. Everything is now over the top, it's just perfect.
It was perfect. Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
And I have seen some comments from that small crowd that opposes the Buff Divers movement, saying that they don't like when Arrowhead bends the knee to player feedback and changes their vision for the game in order to adhere to the player's vision instead. But isn't that what we want from any developer out there? Sure, there is a fine line between responding to feedback and losing your creative vision, but the truth is that the games that survive the longest are the ones that have players in mind when updating their game. And I actually think they did a really good job at striking a balance here. It's not like the game is incredibly easy now, it's just slightly easier than it was before and allows for more fun, which is always a good thing if you ask me. So personally, I'm really excited for what the future holds for this game. I think this update tells us a lot about the direction Arrowhead is going in the future, and it's a good one. Seriously though, if anyone from Arrowhead is listening to me, please don't touch balancing from here on out. Even if something is a little overpowered or broken, just leave it alone for now and fix the other problems. Then, once you've got that done, you can take another look at balancing if you have to. To recap, after months of feeling like we were stuck in a never-ending cycle of disappointment, Arrowhead has flipped the script. Helldivers 2 feels revitalized and has been stimmed up with pure fun. Every weapon now has a fighting chance in combat. Actually, scratch that. Weapons have more than a fighting chance. Everything I've used is legitimately good and can be reliably brought into any mission. And even though you are a Helldiver that got just 20 minutes of training, those of us blessed with PvE skills are going to look like Master Chief out on the battlefield. This update isn't just a normal patch, it's Arrowhead telling us, the community, that they've heard our feedback and they're willing to give us the fun that we've all been wanting. Sure, there are still some problems that we need to overcome, but I think with their shift in philosophy, we're slowly but surely going to watch this game transform into a staple in the PvE genre. Before I let you leave, I want to give you one final hot take. You know I've got to have one in every video. Everyone loves to say that the first month of release was the prime of Helldivers 2, and so far, I'd agree, but let me tell you this. The best is ahead. We may never hit 400k concurrent players again, and we may not see Helldivers capturing the cultural zeitgeist that it did in the past, but at least from a pure gameplay perspective, I am confident that Helldivers 2 has not hit its peak yet. So if you've gotten a chance to play this update, let me know what you think about it, and if you haven't played yet, what are you doing? Get out there, diver! Anyway, I know this was a short one, but I wanted to get my thoughts out quickly so I could get back to actually recording some real content for you guys. Which is just short to say that there's a lot more Helldivers content on the way, just stay tuned. And if you're not subscribed yet, go hit that sub button. You don't want to miss my upcoming content, and it would really help me out. Anyway, that's all from me. As always, until next time, take care of yourselves. See ya!